Ladies and gentlemen, good evening or afternoon, whenever you happen to be watching. My name's Andrew. Some of you know me as Sniggle Fluffy on Experience Project. And I was digging around the internet and found a completely old Goldwater and the old Johnson commercials from 1964. And I found the comparison quite interesting, although Fidel Castro is either dead or almost dead in Cuba. Even though the Nikita Khrushchev is not in power anymore, the USSR is not around anymore. And we're not in the Vietnam War right now, but if you look at what's going on in Afghanistan, with Benghazi, with the corruption, with the graft of the Obama administration, with the bungling of the foreign policy, with the handling of terrorism, and with everything that's gone on in the world as of recent, I felt like that even though this was made 48, almost 49 years ago, that it has quite an interesting parallel today. So I've included some of my favorite clips. I've also included some of the Johnson clips. I'll also have a couple more comments for you in a few minutes. But first, these are the Goldwater clips, and look at how close this is to what the Tea Party and what some of the other critics who have criticized, and correctly so, the Obama administration have said.
On October 18, 1960, speaking in Shamokin, Pennsylvania, when he was running for vice president, Lyndon Johnson said, "I don't want some bearded dictator 90 miles off thumbing his nose at us." End quote. Now, to debate Mr. Johnson on this statement, here is Barry Goldwater, who calls him to account for this administration's colossal bungling on Cuba and Castro.
The same bearded dictator is still 90 miles off thumbing his nose at us. And the Bay of Pigs has left us not a monument to freedom, but a dark blot on our national pride. The United States must provide the leadership which will deal effectively with the problems of Cuba, and which will stop the spread of communism in the Western Hemisphere. His moral responsibility out of style, our papers and our newsreels, and yes, our own observations tell us that immorality surrounds us as never before. We see violence in the streets, in our cities and suburbs, graft and corruption in the highest public offices to which we look for leadership, when scandal in local and national government has become so commonplace that many begin to consider it a way of life, then I say that we, as a nation, are not far from the kind of moral decay that has brought on the fall of other nations and people. The philosophy of something for nothing, the cult of individual and government irresponsibility, is an insidious cancer that will destroy us as a people unless we recognize it and root it out now. I say it is time to put conscience back in government, and by good example, put it back in all walks of American life.
Hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Оглядывайтесь, мы вас не добили под Сталинградом, на Украине, в Беларуси.
For which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible.
Против нас и будете опять готовить нападение, мы так ухнем.
And justice for all.
I want American kids to grow up as Americans, and they will, if we have the guts to make our intentions clear. So clear they don't need translation or interpretation, just respect for a country prepared as no country in all history ever was.
In your heart, you know he's right. Vote for Barry Goldwater.
This was a Daisy Girl commercial. One of the examples that Lyndon Johnson did of hysteria against Goldwater.
7, 6, 6, 8, 9,
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
These are the stakes to make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
And this is another example where he accused Goldwater of being supported by the Klan.
We represent the majority of the people in Alabama who hate niggerism, Catholicism, Judaism, and all the isms of the whole world. So said Robert Creel of the Alabama Ku Klux Klan. He also said, I like Barry Goldwater. He needs our help.
So in that commercial, Lyndon Johnson accused Barry Goldwater of being endorsed by the Klan. However, Lyndon Johnson had a pretty poor record on civil rights. Among other things, he voted against anti-lynching laws during his time in the Senate. He also said to a group of governors on Air Force One, according to Ronald Kessler's Inside the White House, saying, quote, I'll have those niggers voting Democratic for the next 200 years. Also, he said, these Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days, and that's a problem for us since they've now got something they never had before. The political pull to back up their uppityness. Now we've got to do something about this. We've got to give them a little something, just enough to quiet them down, not enough to make a difference. So my question is, who is accusing who? And look at what's going on now with the Obama administration, with the way black and other minority conservatives are handled by liberals in particular. And I could go on and on and on. But as we can see, things have not changed that much. And I'd like to leave you with one final thought. I thought this Goldwater commercial, which was also aired during the same campaign by Senator Goldwater's campaign, was one that summed it up. And honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Everybody has his hand in your pocket. It's the hand of big government. It's taking away about 4 months' pay from what your daddy earns every year. $1 out of every 3 in his paycheck. And it's taking the security out of your grandmother's Social Security.
You know, that's the great trouble with big inflationary government. It takes more and more of your earnings. It slowly but surely destroys individual initiative and responsibility. Government must draw its strength from the people. And as it drains away this strength, it must inevitably undermine the foundations of self-government. I ask you to join me in helping restore the individual freedoms and initiatives this nation once knew, to make government more the servant and not the master of us all. In this free nation, we do not choose to be ruled. We elect to be governed.
We do not choose to be ruled. We elect to be governed. Blessings to you and yours, and may you make wise political choices with that in mind, that we are a free nation. We are not to be ruled by government. We are not to serve government. Government is to serve us. So the whole idea of this country is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Thank you for watching, and be blessed.
Elect to be governed.